Hey guys, welcome to the Ace of Plays channel once again. It's kind of a bonus video today because I wanted to quickly just talk about something. I don't normally do these videos where I talk about stuff in Gwent and how to maybe improve it and, different changes that I might want. So you'll have to excuse me if I'm not the best at it. I usually just play stupid decks and try to survive in this world. But I wanted to talk about artifacts, artifact removal. It's been a hot topic ever since Homecoming released. And I'll be mainly just talking about one of the approaches to artifact removal that has really grown on me lately. And I think maybe it isn't the best option, but I think it's solid. I think it's very simple to execute compared to some of the other ones. And it requires minimal reworks of existing cards. So I do think it's actually a valuable option to consider. Now, I made a Reddit post about this last week. You may have read that. You may have read it. But you gotta get some entertainment in here, right? You may have read that, and you may have already formed your opinions. And of course, that's the big thing here. I am really interested in your opinions on this issue and about this fix that I'm about to try to explain. So anything you want to discuss, anything you want to say, do you agree with me, do you disagree, leave it down below, and let's have some serious discussion. So let's get started. There have been several ideas for how to fix artifacts and artifact removal. And they've all been pretty fleshed out, so there is a lot for CDPR to take from once they do decide to make the move. But my idea, which it isn't like fully originally mine, but I do take pride in being maybe one of the very few advocates of this idea. So, first of all, I want to talk about a couple of cards that I think are pretty well designed, and they kind of set the basis for this whole idea. And one of them is not even here, so and I can't type with my microphone in the way. There we go. Dancing Star. 5 provision, special card, neutral. Destroy an artifact or damage a unit by 3. I like this card. Ever since it was released, I've liked this card because it either destroys an artifact, which can be a pretty huge effect, just straight up destroy an artifact, or it has a secondary use, which due to it having options, it having multiple uses, the alternative is slightly weaker than other cards at the same provision level, like all the other bombs at 5 provisions, deal 4 damage with secondary effects. Alcer's Thunder is just pure 5 damage. This is just 3, but it has that other side to it. I think this is a good design for artifacts, artifact removal rather, and I'll be using Dancing Star as like the basis for what destroying an artifact should cost. 5 provisions, and I think this is fair because I think this card is actually fairly well balanced. This destroys an artifact for 5 provisions, nothing more. Also 5 provisions is Alcer's Thunder, which is one of the more pure removal cards. It can destroy Damien Delator, which costs 6 provisions more, but this trades evenly on points. Alcer's Thunder does. So, removal works that way. Like, removal gets you value when you can remove something with higher value than, just your 5 provision Alcer's Thunder. So, destroying an artifact. The ability, the effect, destroy an artifact. Let's say that is worth 5 provisions. Okay, that'll be important soon. Later in this video, soon. Dancing Star, great card, I love it. Now let's talk about an artifact that I like. Sacred Flame. It's a 10 provision artifact. And it has a deploy, but it also has an ongoing effect. The deploy gives you 6 points, as well as any swarm, fire swarm synergy you might have. You know, it might even be worth more points. But it gives you 6 points on deploy. So if this gets destroyed by something like a Dancing Star, you don't really feel that bad, even though this costs twice as much, because the deploy ability gains you enough points that it makes up for it. But of course, if this does survive on the board, you got a long round, you're going to be spawning a lot of units. You know, this will get you a lot more points. And the opponent, if they can remove it, often will want to do so. But of course, if the round is shorter and they don't really fear this that much, then maybe they just, you know, ditch their artifact removal because it's not worth it. You know, it's a 4-card round. At most, it's a 10 for 10. And there's not much a Dancing Star would do about that. So, Sacred Flame, on the artifact side of my argument here, is going to be a staple. You know, just staple that to your wall. Your Facebook wall. No. What? I'm kind of weird in the head today. But yeah, good card. It puts units on the board, so it doesn't play into no unit strategies. The effect of the card, you know, necessitates that you play more units or spawn more units. So there's nothing no unit about this. You know, it's not really super binary when it comes to removal. But it's a cool card. It works with a pretty cool archetype. Really pulling that archetype together. Great card, Sacred Flame. Now, I will briefly talk about how these cards work together in my argument here. And that is basically, we value artifact destruction at 5 provisions. And whenever they design an artifact that costs more than 5 provisions, give it something on deploy, some immediate value to alleviate a little bit of, you know, that risk. But the thing is, you can have riskier artifacts, which do a little bit less on deploy than just a straight up provision to provision, you know, versus the removal would recommend, I guess. It does a little bit less, but then if it doesn't get removed, it does a little bit more. You know, similar to Damien de la Tour. If it gets removed, it's a trash card. If it doesn't get removed, it gets you a lot of value. It's risky, it's rewarding, and that can exist for artifacts as well. So, when balancing artifacts, just take the artifact's cost, take into account that 5 provisions will straight up destroy it. You know, value like how risky and how rewarding you want it to be. High risk, high reward. Low risk, low reward. And then just add a deploy effect that, you know, kind of fixes it. A similar card, like, I had forgotten about this card. Vandergrift's Blade. Boost an ally unit by 6 on deploy. Guaranteed 6 for 8. Whenever you play a knight, boost it by 1. Do I need to say anything else? This is a low risk, but also fairly low reward. Like, you know, it boosts Prince Ansei's on deploy, so you get the formation duel kind of deal going on. Otherwise, it's just an extra point here and there on your knights, and usually your knights don't care much about being boosted. It's just, you know, some nice extra points in a long round in a knight deck, if knight decks become a thing. Removing this can be worth it to your opponent. They can also just play around it by bleeding you. Or maybe they just don't care that your knights are getting boosted at all. Okay, now I want to move over to a few custom reworks that I made. I think I got 3 of them. And that'll conclude this video. But first, let me just say, scenarios, I think are really good. I think they're really well designed. The only problem, really, two problems. Like, you have scenarios that see a lot of play. Siege, for example. Why does this see a lot of play? Because it can be so easily triggered in one turn. Same with Masquerade Ball. It can be triggered in one turn. Feign Death can very easily be triggered in one turn. And then look at the ones that don't see play. Haunt. This can't be triggered in one turn. So it doesn't see play because of binary artifact removal. If Haunt ever becomes a thing, people tech artifact removal. And then the Haunt players will almost automatically get a negative win rate just because they are trying to play this card. And I'm just mentioning this because, you know, it's relevant for my reworks. So let's go over to the 3 or so cards that I have customly reworked, and I'll further elaborate on this idea. Okay, here we are in my amazing image viewer software. And we got False Siri, an artifact removal card, which I currently strongly dislike. Because if it destroys an artifact, it's a 5 for 7 that destroys an artifact. That can be a lot of value. And if it doesn't, it's a 5 for 7 that can move an enemy, which can also be valuable. So I have slightly reworked it. Basically what I did was I took 2 points off the body and just added them as damage to the movement. So when this moves an enemy, it's still a 5 for 7 that moves. But when it destroys an enemy artifact, it's only a 3 for 7. And I settle on 3 for 7 because the destroy an enemy artifact aspect is worth 5 provisions, right? Dancing Star, that's the baseline that I'm going off of. So this costs 2 more. So I thought a 2-strength body would be fair. But then I figured it's, you know, Dancing Stars are neutral. This is a faction-specific card. The movement ability isn't spectacular always. So it could get an extra point, like 1 extra point. It's also a gold. It's a unique card. Unique, you know, it's a one-of. It's a gold. Dancing Stars are bronze, obviously. So maybe this could be 2 strength and deal 3 damage on the move. But honestly, if I played artifacts and this was played against me in this form, I think I'd be okay with it. I'm not okay with it now. Current False Siri, I'm not okay with. This is a small change, but I think it actually makes a big difference. Next up is Siege. Siege is just the example version. This small tweak that I've made should apply to all scenarios. And as you can see, the ability is still the same. What I've done is I've just changed / added a tooltip for progress. You know, so progress, activate the next chapter of this scenario. Progress only once per turn and not on the turn the card comes into play. Is this excessive? Maybe, but I do feel like these cards are made to take 3 turns. That's what they do. That's part of the risk. And obviously, as we can see right now, you know, leaders that were already problematic because they can play 2 cards in 1 turn and whatnot are abusing these cards. And leaders that can't trigger these in 1 turn see no play. Because why would they? They don't have these amazing burst cards, a shit ton of points. But if we do it like this, maybe it's not the most glorious, not glorious, but you know, it's not the prettiest change maybe. And maybe it is too much, but at least imagine this card. You can play with any Northern Realms leader. Like you don't have to feel forced to play Mobilization or Pincer Maneuver, which nobody should. That sucks. You can play with any leader. You know, you play it down, you get the reinforced trap. That's a 5 provision, pretty decent engine that you get. Your opponent has a unit to interact with, so it's not a no unit strategy, which is why I really do love the scenarios. And you know, you get a 5 provision card, which means that if this gets destroyed right away, you're only losing 9 provisions. Take away the 5 that the destroy an artifact effect costs. They're only trading at 4 provisions, which, first of all, it seems fair for removal. That's kind of what removal does. It seems fair with the risk reward system, because a lot of these scenarios, and some of them would have to be reworked after this, like the Scoia'tael one. If it's this hard limit to only progressing once per turn, the Scoia'tael one kind of needs a change, because the prologue on that is not good. But yeah, that's what removal does. And this has risk, it has a reward. Because if this whole thing plays out, it is strong. I mean, we've all seen it. A lot of the scenarios, if fully played out, are insanely powerful. And, you know, I think they should be very, very strong for their cost. But they should also be equally risky. So honestly, if you just have this limit on them, if you just have this limit on them, and you know, change like pincer maneuver and abilities like that, you know, nerf them, whatever, it would, you know, make the risk reward actually matter, be balanced. And if artifact removal is balanced the way that, you know, I've suggested, with 5 provisions, that's what destroy an enemy artifact costs. If the card costs more, then you can add additional effects. You can add a small body to it. You can add a stronger secondary effect. And they should all have secondary effects, never just destroy an enemy artifact. That's just, it's kind of boring. It's more binary. And, you know, if either the artifact destruction portion is balanced and the card is absolutely garbage against non-artifacts, or the card is still good against non-artifacts, but it is way too good against artifacts. You know, like we've seen this, like Frenzy Dao, a 6 for 8 destroy an artifact. That can be game-winning, or it can be kind of bad, but still a 6 for 8, worst case scenario. It's not too bad. Not too bad. But I hope I made my point about the scenarios properly. Limit them to once per turn, maybe. And, you know, change the Scoia'tael one, I guess. Like, they give you engines. And if the opponent deals with the siege, or they deal with the scenario, then the engine lives a turn, gets a little bit more points. You know, risk reward factored in. It seems kind of balanced to me. Let me know what you think. But the last card here is, this will not require a lot of talking, Wyvern Scale Shield. What I did with this was I just added a deploy. I took away the zeal, but I added a deploy. So it's very much the same card as now. Boost an ally unit by 1, 4 charges, and you're limited to 1 charge per turn. But a 4 for 7, really? So I added deploy, boost an ally unit by 2. It's kind of similar to Vandergrift's Blade. You know, it's a 2-point boost because this costs 2 more than the baseline for artifact removal. So if this gets removed right away, you at least got 2 points for those 2 extra provisions. And, you know, in certain decks, in certain matchups, destroying this will be worth it to the opponent. If you're playing Tridums, this is not 4 points, it's 8 points. And the same with the spear. In something like Great Swords, it's worth 8 points, not 4 points. If you line up a Scorch, oh my god, it can decide who wins the game. So destroying them still has value. But the opponent has to kind of think, okay, how scared am I of this? What can he do with this? Will my secondary effect on my artifact destruction card be more worth it here? And if you queue into an artifact deck and you kind of recognize, okay, it's an artifact deck, can you bleed them? Can you negate their artifact's insane value just by bleeding? Who knows? Anyway, I hope I managed to cover everything I wanted to. I think I did. Let me know down below what you thought about this idea. Do you still prefer any other ideas? Let me know what they are. I do like the giving artifacts armor kind of deal. That also seems fairly simple, but can, you know, add a proper numeric value to artifacts and artifact removal. So I do enjoy that idea as well, but this actually just feels straight up simpler, easier to implement without changing too much. But let me know what you think, and thank you for watching this video. If you watched it all the way through, then you are a legend, because I know I talk on for ages. But I was up a long time last night just thinking about this idea, fleshing it out, and I get really excited, because like, even if this isn't a perfect fix, I think this would be a lot better than what we currently have. And it would open up design space, at least a decent bit more, for artifacts, artifact removal, similar cards like that. I like this idea. Do you? I don't know. Did you like the video? Click like. Did you comment on the video? Prove it. Did you subscribe? You better. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget to check out my Witcher playthrough. Episode 1 came out this week. It was very fun. People seem to really enjoyed it. Go check that out. Link below, maybe? Nah. It's right there on my channel. It's one of the newest videos. Just go find it, you dumb, beautiful bastard. And don't forget to check out today's Gwent gameplay video. We're playing discard. Less memey, but still discard. So enjoy that. Have a good one, guys. Have a nice weekend. I love you guys. I really appreciate everything you're doing for me with your continued support. And I will continue to bring you subpar content that you seem to value very highly. Have a good one. Bye, guys.